Good morning,
Hey,
everyone.
Alex, be good. But
Yeah, very good, Roger. Thank you. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules this morning to join with us. We hope this will be a brief and efficient meeting. I see we'd like to welcome Councilmember McDonald from Orem City. Nice to have you joining with us. He'll be the new representative on Utopia. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
I think also, do we have any other new members of the board or those that are joining from cities?
Nobody else knew.
Okay, all right, very good. Well, welcome. We'll go ahead and jump into the agenda. The first item is approval of minutes from the December 9th, 2024 meeting. Be happy to entertain a motion to approve those or to modify those if necessary.
This is DJ from Brigham City. So moved.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Is there a second?
Second, Doug Gill.
Okay, thank you, Doug. Motion and second. All in favor of approving the minutes of the December 9th, 2024 meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, very good. Appears to be unanimous. Next item on the agenda is at the annual election of Utopia board officers. Are there any individuals from the board who'd like to make a nomination? That slate of officers.
Alex, if you're willing to continue serving as the chair, I would nominate that we just keep our current positions in place with the change with Orem where Jeff Lamson's no longer there. If we could have Tom serve in that role. So this would be my nomination, my recommendation would be to continue with Alex as the chair from Layton City, myself as the first chair, first vice from Linden City, council member Tom McDonald from Orem as the second vice chair, and then Matt Dahls, third vice chair, and Doug Hill as the fourth vice chair. So things are going well. I don't see a reason to shake things up. So.
Agreed.
Okay, very good. Are there any, is there a discussion or concern about that nomination?
No, but I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Doug. I had F-35 flying over. I couldn't hear you there for a minute, so I apologize. Can we have motion and a second to approve the slate of officers as it has currently stood with the exception of Councilmember Tom McDonald serving as the second vice chair in place of Councilmember Lamson. They represent Orem City. So let's do a roll call vote on this, if that's okay. Doug?
Yes.
Adam?
Yes.
Matt? Dahl?
yes,
Councilmember McDonald?
Yes.
Mayor Bott?
Yes.
Bill and Tremonton?
Yes.
Who have I missed? I've got,
Robin Meekum from Centerville.
oh, I apologize, Robin. You're an aye?
Aye.
Okay.
And then yourself.
Pardon?
And just you.
Okay, and myself is an aye. Okay, very good, thank you. We'll continue forward. Next item is a discussion regarding some policies that have been drafted, need to be considered and then adopted or approved. Jason, I believe you're going to present the background on those.
Yes. As you'll remember, in our last board meeting, we went through the fraud risk assessment. And when we were going through the fraud risk assessment, there were 4 things that we could not check the boxes on that we had covered from Utopia. And 3 of those were policies. And the last thing was a statement that we ask everybody on the board and all of our employees to sign saying they'll behave ethically. We have all 4 of those items prepared. Let's see, 3 of those are in your packet, and I want to go over quickly the 3 policies that we're talking about. And before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about the process that we went through to update these policies. Basically, what we did, the policies are the financial fraud or abuse reporting policy. a cash receiving policy and a P card policy. So we have those three policies that we needed to have in place in order to check, to have all the boxes checked on the fraud form. I'd like to thank Nicole for helping out with this. She did much of the heavy lifting on the policies and did a lot of work on them. And part of the review process that we went through with the policies was to compare to what our current cities are doing. And specifically, we looked at, Nicole was very familiar with West Valley's policies. We looked at Brigham City's, Orem's policies, Centerville's, Midville's, and Murray's policies, and made sure that what we were doing was consistent with what we see with their policies, although tailored for how Utopia works. Obviously, Utopia is significantly, how we receive cash, for example, significantly different than a lot of the cities are. We don't have tellers at windows receiving cash. We rarely have a walk-in come up to give us cash. I think that's only happened, that might happen once a year, maybe, if that. So most of the payments we receive, for example, are through the mail, and we might get 0 to 4 cash payments mailed a month, something like that, and the rest of what we get is checks. So we are a little bit different than cities that way. By far, the vast majority of our payments are electronic. So with that being said, the three policies are included in the packet. I've kind of given you an overview of what's in there. I could go through and give you a more detailed report on what's in there if you'd like, Alex, or the board, or we could leave it at that level. I'll kind of leave it up to you guys. Would you like me to go through and give a more detailed summary of what's in the policies?
Yeah, I think it would be well, unless the board objects, to just do a brief overview.
Okay.
Summarize the overview of each policy, and then we'll be happy to respond to any questions.
Okay. Would somebody allow me to share my screen? I'm sorry, I just tried to share my screen.
Sorry.
Okay, now I can. Here we go. The first policy that we have is the financial fraud or abuse reporting. If you'll look at it, that we do some definitions of fraud, abuse, and what a whistleblower is in the policy. We talk about procedures for how fraud or abuse can be reported and who it can be reported to. On our website, we do have a link where fraud and abuse can be reported by anybody that wants to do it there. And we were already able to check that box on the fraud risk assessment. But additionally, this tells you how direct reporting can be made or anonymous reporting. And direct reports can go to any supervisor, department head, the CFO, the executive director, or the general counsel. There's an investigation and resolution section that talks about what will happen if any fraud or abuse is reported and who they are reported to and what the process is to look into those and resolve those. Additionally, it talks about some training that needs to be done periodically in relation to fraud and abuse. Any questions on the fraud and abuse policy? If not, I will move forward to the cash receiving policy that we have here. Looks like I have UIAs up. I thought I called up Utopia. Sorry, these are Utopia policy, not UIA. I have a Utopia policy. I'm probably not going to change it at this point. I was looking in the wrong folder. But anyway, the same language is in Utopia, and it's basically for cash receiving. What is here just says who's responsible for the cash receiving process, which by state code is the treasurer. And we talk about just high level that there needs to be a system to make sure everything happens correctly and per state law. We are required to deposit cash within 3 days of it being received, cash or checks, and we do that. We already have been through a lot of cash when we do the segregation of duties checklist every year, and we do have segregation of duties with our cash receiving and disbursements process. Any questions about the cash policy?
Jason, I have a question. That third bullet point under the treasurer that conduct random and unannounced reviews and audits, has that been a past practice, or is that something we intend to do going forward? And
That's more going to be a intended going forward. We do have two sets of eyes looking at everything right now, but we're asking the treasurer now to do random audits periodically during the year a couple of times.
okay, good. I think that's wise. Just,
Yeah.
just for people to be aware that it's taking place and on a random basis. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And like I said, our cash is totally different than like a cash drawer type thing. It's yeah, we basically have one person that takes a lot of our mail and a backup. And so they'll be the ones we'll be auditing. And the last one is the P card policy, our purchasing card policy. Once again, we start off with some definitions here of purchasing card and some of the other terms that are used. We talked about the process for issuing a purchasing card at a high level and what has to happen there. What authorized uses, what you can use a purchasing card for to make purchases. If you'll look, I won't talk as much about the permissible expenses, but under prohibited expenses, specifically prohibited items are personal purchases, cash advances or withdrawals, and anything with alcohol, tobacco, or any other non-business related items are not allowed to be purchased on the P cards. Cardholder responsibilities, the next thing we have there, that they have to safeguard their P card and what to do if that they need to tell people immediately if they lose a card. They need to provide transaction documentation for every single charge that's made on a P card. And they have to live within the limits that have been set. Really, the system pretty much makes them live within most of the limits. But they also have to sign off saying that they're going to do that. Oversight and reconciliation, monthly, everybody has to provide detailed documentation for every single purchase made that is reviewed by their department head and also by somebody in accounting to make sure the documentation is correct. It talks about who reviews transactions for which type of transactions under supervisor review. Talks about what happens if there's misuse or if there's misuse of P cards and what the consequences are. Then some training down below and the retention policy on the P cards, that all documentation is required to be kept for 7 years as per state law. Any questions or comments on the P card policy? If not, the last thing we talked about was a statement of ethical behavior that we will be asking everybody to sign. And here's the statement of ethical behavior that we have prepared. We did have a request in the UIA board meeting to add a statement saying that everybody on the board has received the required training that were required by the state auditor to have that we're required to have periodically. I don't remember the exact time frame. Nicole, was that every 4 years they're required to have the training or every year?
No, it's every year. There's a section of the state auditor's website that provides a link that I'm certain you either take every year or have provided to you by your provider for your own city that would meet the requirements. So we'll just add a little sentence that details that. And of course, that will be the same for our employees as well, who also receive annual training already with regards to this issue, but we'll make sure and clarify that it meets the standards required.
Okay. And yeah, that'll be the only change to this statement, which we will be sending out to all employees in the board shortly to sign. Any questions on the statement of ethical behavior? If not, we are asking the board just to approve with a motion. These policies, it's not required to be approved by resolution when we looked into it. So we would ask for a motion approving these policies.
Thank you, Jason, for taking time to go through that briefly. Hearing no questions from the board, I'd be happy to entertain a motion to approve these policies. We'll just do it by-
I'll make that in the motion as a new guy. They look appropriate, thought out, and I make the motion, we approve them.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember McDonald. Is there a second?
DJ will second it.
Thank you, Mayor. A motion and a second to approve them as presented. Let's just do a voice or a consensus vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, thank you. Appears to be unanimous. Thanks for your work on that, Nicole and Jason. Next item is a presentation discussion regarding our financial audit for fiscal year 2024. I think, Jason, you're going to introduce that issue as well.
Yes, I am. Just talk a little bit about this financial audit presentation and kind of how we will be going through this. Is I will present a presentation I have on the financial results of Utopia as per the financial audit fiscal year 2024, which ended June 30th, 2024. After my presentation, I will ask for any questions from the board and be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And then I will turn the time over to our auditors, who will go over how their audit went, any findings they had, anything they looked over, and allow you to ask questions of our auditors of anything that you'd like to ask. So that's kind of how we're planning on doing that. Ben Bailey from Keddington and Christensen is, I believe, representing our auditors on this call. So I'll turn the time over to him after me.
Very good.
Just some Utopia fiscal year 2024 financial highlights as we look here. And this is just Utopia for this top line, not including anything from UIA, but their average monthly recurring subscriber revenue increased by 5%. It went to $767,000 per month from $730 in the prior fiscal year. So we are seeing increases in average monthly revenue in Utopia, not related to UIA activity either. That's just average revenue. Average monthly recurring network operations revenue increased by 9.8%. That revenue is what's coming from UIA customers. They pay a certain fee to Utopia every month for every new customer that comes on UIA. So that's where we're seeing the bigger increases that we have coming through, and that's as per our original plan. So that's good. Consulting and construction contract revenue increased by 124%, went to 18.6 million from 8.3. This is the Bountiful project and the project we have coming through from Bountiful. So we're building out the network. They're paying for the network through progress billings, as we talk about basically every financial update we do every board meeting, and we've been looking at. That's different than we've done with other projects, but that's the biggest change if you look at our financials, is how much of consulting revenue that we have coming through our financials versus other types of revenue. There is also some money in there for the project that we're doing up in Montana. We do have a small amount of consulting revenue coming in from there, though that's a very small percentage of the total. Next thing on here is the number of subscribers on the UIA Utopia network. It's increased by 13.1%. We're at 56,000, almost 57,000 customers at the end of fiscal year 2024, compared to 50,000 at the end of fiscal year 2023. This does not include, this is just the network owned by UIA and Utopia. It doesn't include any partner subscribers, like anything in Idaho Falls or anything in Montana or Bountiful are not included in these numbers. So when Roger gives his update later on in the meeting, he'll have higher numbers than are shown here, because he'll be showing some of those other cities in with our numbers also. But this is just the UIA Utopia and partner cities where UIA has issued the debt. That's those subscribers you're seeing there. Operating revenue increased by 42%. This is primarily because of the consulting revenue for the Bountiful project. We also have a high increase in expenses to offset that, of course. So we're seeing that with most of that. We're seeing that increase both on revenue and expense, is what I mean to say there. Here's our comparison of our Utopia balance sheet when you're looking at a 4-year comparison. And mainly I'm going to focus on just a couple of things when we look at fiscal year 2023 versus fiscal year 2024. Primarily, I wanted to start by looking at current assets, which decreased from 9.7 million to 6.6 million. And we have talked about in some of our other board meetings, the reason for this and what you're going to see mostly is our construction expenses in Bountiful, as of the end of the fiscal year, outpaced our construction revenue. We do expect that to be turning during first fiscal year 2025. As we ended up billing more money, less revenue for conduit expenses and more revenue for, as we put in the conduit, we actually only took some of our revenue off of one conduit went in, and we think we probably should, we put 60% of revenue coming in with conduit. We think we probably should have made that 75 or 80% revenue coming in with conduit. But as we finish putting in cable and splicing over the next year, we expect those numbers to turn and to have more revenues coming in for cable and splicing than we have expenses. And we expect that to bring us back into the profitable over fiscal year 2025.
Yeah, it's just a timing issue, just make that point, right? We have to float
Yeah.
it a little bit until we get paid and when as it gets completed.
Yeah, we are still projecting that to be profitable. It's just a timing issue of expenses went out and we're waiting for the revenues to come in. Other than that, if you look at current liabilities, they've increased. The majority of that increase is also related to invoices on the Bountiful project and a lot of the construction invoices that we do have outstanding as of year end. That's mostly Bountiful project related. Here's our 3-year comparison of operating revenues and expenses. And really, if you look at, really what I want to look at here is fiscal year 23 versus 24. Once again, 23 operating revenues were very high. Part of the reason our operating revenues were high there is because we started the Bountiful project and required a prepayment to be made on the Bountiful project. So we received a big glut of revenue at the beginning of the project and didn't have any expenses in fiscal year 2023. So that's why everything looks high in 23. And then in 2024, we had it switched the other way. If you want to look at the net to our cash flow of how much is outstanding at year end that we're waiting, that's the timing issue, it's probably closer to somewhere between 1.5 and $2 million is the net between the 2 years of where we would be in Bountiful and what we expect to make up over the next year. Other than that, the other line that's interesting there is the distribution from UIA. The distribution from UIA went from 4 million down to 1.9 million. That was because we had some revenues being generated in Utopia, primarily consulting revenues that could be used to make the yearly payments to the cities. The yearly payments they still increased in fiscal year 2024 versus fiscal year 2023 by about $300,000 overall. That's a net for all the cities. I think we went to, I think it was 4.3 to 4.6 million is about what the payments were. If you look at the year 23 versus 2024 that went to the city. So we did increase that to cover the 2% increase the cities were paying. But that's the biggest changes that you do see there. The big change in the bond interest and fees, I might want to mention that one also. Most of that big change in bond interest and fees is actually, it's money that's due to, we have a big payment that's due to cities because of the payments you are making on the Utopia debt, and we do keep track of that. So, yeah, that's the biggest changes in our net position. If I were to make any other comment of anything that's changed over the last couple of years, is we have brought in a lot more consulting revenue, and we do expect that to continue the next couple of years. We have some consulting projects that are out there that should bring in some significant revenue. So we're seeing that contribute a lot more to the bottom line than it has in the past. So and I think that's a very good thing. Any questions on the financial update?
Yeah, I have a question. Have we properly matched revenue and expenses if it's going to flip around next year on this big project?
Yeah, we have. I mean, have we properly matched? If we're talking within a couple of months, the answer is probably no. Within a year, we have the expenses go out a little bit quicker than they're going to come in. So they're not exactly properly matched with that. And that is the issue we are dealing with, is we had a short-term issue with revenue. If we're talking about ongoing revenues for running the system monthly and the long-term issues, yes, we have. We've expected those revenues to come in the future, and the expenses that come in from monthly payments to pay for the monthly expenses.
And Bountiful is a 3-year build out, but even there's a lot of revenue tied to the installations of customers, which kind of comes later in the project. So even though we've got to build out of 3 years, the installations start after the first year to year and a half, which we're into that very first part, but most of the cities still can't sign up. The installations will really start picking up later this year as more of the city becomes available, and there is revenue there for us with every install we complete. So it's really like a 5 or 6 year period where we have different expenses going out, revenues coming in. Everything's trending well and going well at the 6-year outlook, but as things hit in these individual fiscal years, they jump around quite a bit.
So just so I understand that, are you projecting that it'll take 6 years to recover the costs?
No, where we're really outlining cash is on the construction, which is the first 3 years. So Jason mentioned there was money right up front. I think it was $4 million. So that looks great financially, as we had no expense yet. But then as we're spending money and building the network, we kind of have gone underwater on the timing of things, because we build it, and then as areas are completed, we build that to the city. And then we go into placing cable and splicing fiber and turning those up, and they all have triggers that bring in revenue as we complete them. But we're floating some of that. If you were to just take that 3-year look at it, we're not really floating it. We're just using the $4 million that we started with. But from an accounting perspective, it's like, hey, great, we made $4 million here at the beginning, and now we're losing money. Well, we're not actually losing money. It's just the timing of.
Actually, Roger, we have spent that $4 million.
Okay, so we're a little bit under, or somewhat
When I'm
underwater.
telling you the number, I'm telling you cumulative on this one. When I said we're at the end of the year, probably $2 million in cash, that's cumulative, including the 4.
Yeah, and that was the issue with the conduit. Placing the conduit is the lion's share of expenses on the construction of the network. And we bill out 60% of the project amount as we do the conduit. And to Jason's point earlier, that probably represents closer to 75 to 80% of the cost. So I guess we're underwater on that line item, but we'll make up ground as we complete the cable placement and splicing. That'll, in a sense, be very profitable. And that's what we're going to get a lot of done over the next few months, because we're approaching that phase of the construction in a significant part of the city. So yeah, it's a little bit of back and forth with spending money, or receiving money up front, then spending money, going underwater a little bit, then we'll catch up as we complete that network. And then there's years of installations, which add up. As we do thousands of installations of the city, each of those has a amount we bill for the city as we complete those.
Yep.
It all adds up to the total project cost that we committed to the city, and the total project cost is still a good place for us to both provide the city with a good value, but from Utopia's perspective, that there is margin built into that pricing schedule for us.
Yeah.
So just to follow up then, Jason, are you projecting that the total revenues will catch up or outpace total expenditures by the end of this next fiscal year?
I am projecting and most of it's going to come in January through June is where we're going to see that coming in, is what I've been told. There is another issue where 5% of the total project is kept in retainage for Bountiful, and we get that upon completion of the mainline construction. If we look at year end, that's over $1 million of what I'm talking about that we're out. And we know that is coming at the end. They are going to have to make that payment at the very least. So that kind of offsets it, and that's part of the timing issue. But we are expecting more revenue to come in. And the only 3 things we bill on are placing conduit, placing fiber into the conduit and then splicing the fiber. And we are being told that the cost of putting the fiber in the conduit and splicing the fibers will be much less than the revenue we receive on those, and we're expecting that to make things up.
And being told is us. I mean, that's our team managing it.
That's what I mean. We're projecting. We are projecting that. That's what I should say, to be more clear. Sorry.
So if you look out, let's say two years and beyond, where we start the installation that Roger was talking about, will the annual revenues exceed the annual expenses for installation?
That's what well, for installation for sure. Installation isn't having a problem right now. It's just mainline construction. And we think the mainline construction itself will have more revenue than expense when we get to the end here in a couple of years.
And so far, we've only been talking about the construction revenues and expenses. We have an operating revenue per customer that perpetually will be bringing in revenue to Utopia for every customer on the system. So as we, obviously we have some expense with locating and repair and maintenance, but we have a very good economy of scale with all of that. So every customer in that system is still a subscriber, not a full subscriber. We don't get 100% of the revenue because the city's paying for the debt on it. They did their own bonding, so they get a portion of the revenue to cover that. But we get a portion of the revenue for operating, and that's expected to be another profitable revenue for us.
Jason, switching gears, I have another question. I know we don't deal with UIA, but well, this is kind of a question for both Utopia and UIA. Do either of those organizations maintain a fund balance or reserve?
UIA does, or Utopia does not, and it's not even close because there's a large amount of money we show as owing to cities for payments they've made in the past on our original bonds. And basically any payment a city makes ends up being negative fund balance to us until we pay it back. And so that negative fund balance has been increasing the last few years, although we do budget for it to increase. We don't usually hit those budget numbers. And frankly, that's a little bit expected. UIA is very close to having a fund balance right now. They hover right around a little bit negative or a little bit positive the last 4 or 5 years. And we're projecting within the next couple of years for it to be positive again. It increased last year by 1.3 million in UIA.
So this is maybe a policy question, but if there were an emergency of some type that would require, let's just say, I don't know, an earthquake happens, a portion of the network goes down, there's no revenue coming in, but the expenses stay the same, what would be the plan to cover any shortfall in the event of an emergency if there's no fund balance?
There is no fund balance, but there is cash reserves. If you look at UIA, we specifically have, we can go for about 90% of a year off our cash reserves to keep operations going at the UIA level. There would be a problem making bond payments for sure if we didn't have any revenues coming in, and they would probably have to dip into the debt service reserve accounts if we had a catastrophe where no revenue was coming in at all for anything. I would say that's fairly consistent with a lot of organizations that we see as far as how much cash they can go. On the Utopia side, they would still get their, we would have to make some difficult decisions, but there would still be the revenue that could come in from UIA. You would still have your $10 million coming in from them until they ran out of cash. And you would still, and you'd have to run off that and see how you could do it. It would be difficult.
We do have insurance for some.
Are the cash reserves in UIA?
Most of they are right now, yes.
Are they bond proceeds? Is that the cash reserves or bond proceeds?
No, this is just in our cash account.
So do you show that on UIA's statements anywhere, what that cash reserve is?
It's just our operating cash.
Okay,
Yeah, it's just our cash account.
but you do show that on a statement?
Yeah, that's shown on the balance sheet.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Okay, very good. Let's move ahead then. Again, thanks for the questions.
And if not, then I guess we're going to turn the time over to the auditors to do their part of the presentation.
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay, thanks, Jason. And we'd also like to thank the board for, the long relationship we've had auditing Utopia. Just a reminder, we do consider the board as those charged with governance and in charge of the financial process. And just a reminder that the audit does not relieve you of the financial of that responsibility. So we had it was a pretty relatively, easy audit this year. Working with Jason and his staff is always good. We didn't have any findings. I'll just go over a few things that's in our reports and what we do. And then if you have any questions, you can let me know. So we design our procedures to obtain reasonable rather than absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatement. And if you have a copy of the financials, that's on page 1. That's our opinion, clean opinion, that the financial statements present fairly for the year ended June 30th, 2024. And then we do have a separate packet with our supplemental reports, and these are the internal control reports required by government auditing standards. And it's where we just take a look at the controls and the compliance, not for the purpose of providing an opinion, just to see that they're operating and to see that they're designed effectively. And with that report, we didn't notice any compliance issues, like with laws, OSHA, stuff like that, or any control issues. And then our second report is just on state compliance with requirements of the state auditor. We didn't have any findings with that either. And just a couple of things to go over in the financials. The significant accounting policies are in note 1. And the accounting system produces reliable financial information, and Utopia has sound accounting policies that produces, and the disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. And like I said, so we didn't have any findings, no disagreements with management. Working with Jason's great. Do you have any questions for me on our opinions? Okay, like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to work with Utopia again this year. And
I have just one, Ben.
okay,
You mentioned that working with Jason is great. Is it really great, or is it just okay?
it's pretty good. He knows what he's doing.
No, we love Jason.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Very good. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very good. Is there a need to adopt the audit?
No, you don't.
Okay, all right, very good. So again, just to clarify, there are no questions from board members regarding the audit or Jason's presentation. And thank you for the questions earlier on the financial. That's important discussion, and I think it's good to always be very mindful of those kinds of things. So I've made several notes and things I hadn't thought of previously. So thanks for doing that. Let's move on to the next item, which is a Utopia financial update. Maybe you've covered much of that, Jason.
I have. I will just very quickly go over the financial update. Let's see here. Got to get it shared. There we go. Here's our normal Utopia financial update. Looking above just at some of the differences that are shown here. The residential transport revenue, we're projecting year end right now on this projection to be about 346,000 low. I really think it's going to be closer to, if I were to do my projection, I'd say it'd be closer to 100,000 low, because we are going to have some future growth that's not taken into account here. But with that being said, our other revenues, if you look at access fees, especially for bandwidth and fiber leases, And those are just other contracts we do for other types of services, of maybe a bulk line or something like that. Roger could explain more. We're seeing good demand for those. And we're projecting that they're going to be 183,000 high for bandwidth and 471,000 high for fiber lease. So that's very, very good. Network operations revenue is shown as projecting low, but that's just a timing issue with kind of how we do some of our calculations. We project that that will be very close to that number for year end. And that's revenue that comes from UIA to Utopia through for their growth. If you look at operating expenses, payroll expenses are trending a little bit lower than what we have budgeted, and that's because we've had some open positions we're trying to fill is the primary reason for that. And we are seeing some success. We are seeing success fulfilling positions, but we're seeing come in a little slower than we budgeted. Other than that, marketing is projected to be a little high at this point. We're gonna get with Lexi and talk a little bit about what's going on with that. And we'll have a better estimate for that at the end of next year. And then network operations expenses are projected to be a little bit high. That's a little bit timing of just breaks and other stuff that's happening a little bit with that. That's once again construction related for just a lot of construction going on out around our network, and we're having more breaks, more line moves, more things that we have to do there than what we had to budget slightly. But overall, we're projecting our expenses to be lower than budget overall. So that's good. And then at the bottom, big lines that we want to look at right now. Capital revenue, 13.1 million at Bountiful. Capital expenses, 12.8. So we've seen a $300,000 turnaround so far this year. I just looked, we have about $8.5 million left to bill on the construction side of the project for Bountiful. And we're 95% done with the conduit, which is where most of our expense is. So that's where we're expecting the turnaround to happen. Any questions on the financial update? If not, I will go quickly to the revenue charts. And if we look at the revenue charts, we'll see a steep increase in the overall revenue between October and November. And this steep increase is related to the rate increase that we did. We passed that on to service providers over 2 months. So if you'll see there, we went from roughly, 4.3 million a month in revenue to 4.8 million a month in revenue, total revenue for UIA and Utopia over 2 months. Very, very good revenue growth. We've had good subscriber growth in there also, which Roger will give us an update on in his subscriber update. Along with what we saw with the overall revenue growth, this is just for UIA, but it is of importance to Utopia, obviously. We can see the difference between total revenue in UIA versus total bond expenses, and that gap continues to widen and to widen very well. And that's a very good thing for allowing us to continue to make payments to cities and to continue our operations. Any questions? If not, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Let's move on to the next item, which is a network update, and Roger will be presenting that.
Thanks. So in your packets, you have our subscriber report. I just want to draw attention to a few things. One is that this field didn't update very well on the subscriber count. So we're over 71,000, the actual number being 71,226. So we'll get that fixed in future reports. Another thing is, our subscribers are still growing across the board. Generally, we see little blips here and there. Nice thing is they usually come back. We've seen some door-to-door campaigns on fiber take a temporary hit at cities, but then we seem to come back. So that hit us a little bit in Bergen City, but now we're growing subscribers there again. Centerville right now seems to be getting hit with a door-to-door campaign from them. But when we're talking about getting hit, we may be losing 20 to 30 subscribers in those cities per month. Overall, we're still growing by 500 to 1,000. It's a slow part of the year right now, and it always is. If you were to look at our charts, it always kind of slows down a little bit in January and February. So we're in that approximate 500 subscribers a month net growth, which is actually phenomenal. If you go back, 5 to 10 years, those would be record numbers. So we're still growing very well across the system. The report here showing take rates, it looks from a take rate perspective like we had a phenomenal month. You'll see take rates jump a little more than was typical. That's not accurate in the sense that we added lots and lots of customers to increase take rate. It's a little bit of a change in our reporting methodology where we were over reporting on addresses in the sense that the county data had a lot of locations. We've mentioned this in the past. We've cleaned up some of our reporting to better reflect actual potential subscribers and how we run this report. So there was a little bit of an increase, and I'd say that is more accurate now than it has been in the past. We're not trying to skew the numbers to show higher take rate, and there's actually more that we need to do for addresses that count against us that are actually served because we have a lot of bulk arrangements that are not being reported on properly. So these are still a little bit underreporting on our take rates, but the more accurate view is actually by looking at subscribers. Those are real. Those are every single one of those is accounted, connection that we're billing for, and we can measure those as opposed to being kind of subject to accuracy in county records on the other side of it. So things are going well. We're adding customers. We have started. I want to make mention of a door-to-door campaign that we're running in West Valley City right now. We had done this in Yellowstone through our partner there to kind of boost awareness and sales in Yellowstone fiber. And it worked really well. And we have used RFPs to qualify and get these door-to-door reps in place. And we also are concerned, right? We don't want a negative reputation. We don't want high pressure. There's a lot of negatives associated with door-to-door campaigns. So this is we'd say it's kind of a light touch. And we regularly are going through every single complaint, identifying any reps that may be too pushy or misleading people. And it's actually going very well. We've started doing this in West Valley City. And it's been very successful. We're just getting started. Jeff, you had some of the numbers related to that?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. I would echo what Roger's saying, that it's being very successful in West Valley. So far to date, these numbers are as of last Thursday. We've knocked 3,800 doors, and of those 3,800, we talked to about 1,500 residents. Not everybody opens their door, of course. And then of those 1,500, we've sold about 300 accounts. So we're having a great interaction at the door. And again, part of our qualification through the RFP process with these door-to-door sales reps is making sure that it was a more of an informational campaign than it was a true sales-based campaign. And so I think that speaks to the quality of our service and our reputation. That when the awareness is brought to them at the door, that they're willing to sign up at such high numbers. So yeah, West Valley is going very well, and we're really excited to continue in West Valley and potentially beyond.
Did you say 300 out of 1,500 answers? 20%?
Thereabouts. Yes, it's
that's not pretty good. That's excellent.
Well,
let's knock on more doors. Congrats.
It's a balanced approach. Of course, we're sending out, so the group that we partnered with is only sending their best reps, and we're making sure that we're having quality conversations with them, either at the door, or if that conversation moves from the door to our call center, that we're actually educating the customer impartially on all the ISPs that they have to choose from. And we do feel like our service is superior to the competition. I mean, I don't want to necessarily name any names, but they have very low NPS scores, whereas we have very, very high NPS. So I'm encouraged by it, and I think all of you should be as well. And so we're excited in these cold months to be adding some additional subscribers over what we would if we weren't doing this, and then roll it into the spring and summer.
That's substantially higher than we had when I served as mission president. Congratulations.
Hey, Roger, can we go back to that chart showing the subscribers again? I'm just, who is that top line? Who has the most subscribers? Is that other? And then if it is, who is other?
So that's Layton City has our largest
Oh,
subscriber
that's
base.
Layton. Okay.
Yeah, and then second up is Orem, and we're, they're at risk of being overtaken by Idaho Falls. I do think eventually West Valley City, I mean, it's our largest city, and efforts like this to get the message out there. It's such a large city with so many more potential customers that I'm thinking 6 months to a year from now, you're going to see that line from West Valley City start to try and compete with our top, just by subscribers. And we have higher take rates, our highest take rates in Morgan. I mean, there's no reason not to sign up for Morgan. There's no other good option. In the other cities, I would say there's not a good option, but there's a less bad options in the other cities, where we have some pockets with a fiber alternative, and obviously a large cable competitor there. So yeah, we're doing very well, but just to try and volume of subscribers, Layton, Orem, and Idaho Falls are the top 3 right now.
What is Layton's? I just was looking. What is Layton's take rate?
43.7 there, and with some scrubbing of addresses and things, it's probably closer to 50%. But based on our, right now it's nice to show the trending of things, and we know that we have some addresses that are bulk that are counting against us.
So that seems high for an urban area. I'm curious, Alex, what do you attribute that high take rate to?
It's all Alex.
No, it's not Alex, but I think honestly, from the inception of our participation in Utopia all the way through the hard times and now in the good times, Layton has consistently been positive about the effort. And so I think, looking back, I think that's one of the things is that they're never generated at our governmental level or even in the public much animosity or angst about Utopia. I think that's really helped us over time, especially when it turned the corner. Now we have people who come in and you probably have the same thing, but we have people come into city council on a variety of issues and complain and chastise us and tell us we don't know what we're doing, but often they end with, you have all the things you're messing up. One thing you got right is Utopia, so don't you dare change that. So it's just been an evolution. I don't know if that's what you're looking for or not, Doug, but I think that's really been one of the secrets. And then we promote it in the city. We have some brochures and flyers and stuff out front, and just are very positive about it. We don't try to push it on people, but there's a good feeling about it. We never allow it to become a negative discussion around it in the community.
Well, I just was curious. We've always just stayed right about that 30%. It doesn't seem to change a whole lot from that. And I don't know, maybe Roger has ideas, but I don't know how the competition, right? I would have thought Layton and Murray and Midvale, who are in the middle of large urban areas, would have a lot of competition out there. And that's what I've always thought, is that there's just a lot of choices in Murray. And as a result, we don't seem to change a whole lot. It doesn't go up, right? I mean, people love Utopia, and we don't have I don't think we used to have a public relations, public image issue with Utopia, but that hasn't occurred for so many years. I don't think that is an issue anymore. Anyway, I was just curious why we don't seem to change a whole lot.
So, there's all these kind of games with the available addresses where the county data jumps, and there's been some development in Murray where new neighborhoods come on, or just down the street here, tore down the RC Willie and they're putting in a bunch of homes. So we do see new areas coming online, but if you're just looking at subscribers, and this is a longer chart, you know, that first cover page in Murray is just, hey, this is the last 6 months. You don't really see the long-term trends there very well, but we've dramatically grown the subscriber base in Murray. The build out of the final areas really was in 2022, but we're still growing. And this dip here, I think, is what really worked against Murray. And that was the conversion of some bulk contracts or from individual to bulk. So we don't actually take a big hit, but it's just kind of in the reporting. But I would say actually doing pretty well in Murray. If we were to go in and scrub we have more apartment complexes in Murray than many of the other cities. And if we fix that data, I think we find that our take rate is actually much better than what's being reported. Yeah, again, we appreciate cities that support this and promote it. I do think that makes a big difference, city to city. And I know more of our board members are fantastic, but as you're able to find opportunities within the cities to help with the reputation and support it, it's not always positive from cities, and we would like to help with that and improve that. And as there's opportunities to do that, we'd love that. I mean, I think back in Layton where you kind of pulled us into a lot of city staff meetings to talk and answer questions and promote this within staff because they interact with the public in a lot of different ways. And so in other cities, if there's opportunities for us to come in and you know, not sell the service so much, but just explain the partnership and how we're here to help in many ways, not just residential service, but for the businesses, for the schools, for the city itself using our fiber. I think there's a lot of just kind of positive messaging that kind of trickles out through the community. You know, if we go talk to someone at the door and I'm just saying Murray because we're here, but we're walk down the street and ask someone, hey, do you know that this is a city effort in partnership with Utopia? And that Murray is a, you know, an owner or partner, how you want to describe that situation. I think most people don't know about that. They just think we're another broadband provider out there. And we try to promote that, but any efforts that cities can do to help there, it does make an impact to take rates and revenues ultimately. And, you know, then it trickles over to Jason's department where they, you know, were able to allocate funds towards bonds and improve things generally financially for us and the cities. Any other questions on the report? Take rates. I did want to bring up one other thing. With our network, you know, obviously we have fiber to the home and business and all the end users and provide an excellent dedicated connection there, gigabit, 2.5 gig, even 10 gig. But that all feeds up through our network and gets to a fiber hut. And there's a lot of capacity needs to go to that fiber hut. And those fiber huts come back to a core with massive connections and lots of those across all these cities. And even with fiber to the home, not all systems can keep up with demand, especially as there's major events. We have various teams that are constantly upgrading the network with Aaron Leach, our CTO, and the technology and architecture, and then actually deploying the network switches. We have our network engineering team under Jeff and our NOC that monitors it to identify when there's events and things. And I just want to give Jeff a quick opportunity to talk about how things went with the Super Bowl, which would be a super event when it comes to bandwidth utilization.
Yeah, we have a couple of these types of stress test events during the course of the year, but none's as great as the Super Bowl or sustained as the long as the Super Bowl. So we had 500 gigabytes of aggregate network traffic last night. And thankfully, I'm a little bit on the edge of my seat every single time we have one of these big events that we didn't have any network outages or any sort of customer impact. We're always ready to respond to those events if they do actually happen, if we do have any outages. But last night we had the Super Bowl and we got out unscathed, if you will. So I'm very happy about that.
So it didn't used to be an issue with the Super Bowl 10 years ago, whatever, because most viewers were still watching it on a cable service or satellite. But now so many people use streaming services that those events are bandwidth dependent, and it does take a lot of network capacity and planning to stay ahead of those and maintain headroom on the network so everything works. So we're really happy with how that turned out, and we were on top of it. The best network in the industry is so. Anyways, just want to bring that up. It's interesting information about how things are performing.
Glad you did better than the Chiefs.
Go ahead, Councilmember McDonald.
I just said, glad you did better than the Chiefs, that's all.
Oh,
They had a rough day.
yeah. Very good. Anything else, Roger?
Nope.
On that? Okay. Well, very good. Are there any other items that any member of the board would like to raise? Okay. Well, seeing that again, thank you for your time this morning and for the good discussion on a variety of subjects. I think discussion is good. Even contrary discussion from time to time that makes us think and look ahead, and out of that kind of contest of ideas, I think comes the best decisions for the organization. So thanks to all of you. Thanks to the staff, especially for the excellent work that you do. Also, thank you. I see Laura Lewis on, and we sure appreciate Laura and the relationship we've had with her through many years. And also want to just thank those of you who are elected officials for your support of this network. That's a big thing from a political perspective in our community. So thank you very much for all that you do, and to the board members as well. It's a privilege to rub shoulders with you in something that's really important and successful and blesses and benefits a lot of people in the state of every sort and variety. So it's nice to be part of something that clearly benefits people and helps improve the quality of their life. So I probably said too much as usual, but anyway, thanks to all of you and wish the very best to you. So thanks again for your time this morning. Be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Hey, Mayor, thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Adam. All in favor say aye.
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 And I suppose there won't be any nays. So we will stand adjourned. So thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks, Alex.
Thanks for continuing to serve, Alex.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it doesn't take much brains, right? I can do it.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Great group. Thank you.